All right, we're back here on WrestleRant. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and right here on WrestleRant, I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. And for the entire month of October, we're talking about old No Mercy events with today and focusing on the 2004 installment. So a decent show on the whole, much like 2003. Kicking off the show was Eddie Guerrero versus Luther Reigns. A fine match. It just boggled my mind. Much like with the '03 installment, where Benoit went from facing A-Train of all people, Albert, Lord Tensei, whatever the hell you want to call him. A fine match. Much like this one where he kind of carried his opponent, very similar in that respect. But Benoit went from a throwaway feud with A-Train to main eventing WrestleMania the very next year. That's just how weird things work in WWE. Kind of the case with this match, or just kind of the opposite though. Eddie was not in the main event of WrestleMania, obviously, but he was in a headlining match, retained his WWE title against Kurt Angle. Months later here at No Mercy, he's opening the show with Luther Reigns. I mean, I know he just, finished off his feud with Kurt Angle, had a very good match at SummerSlam, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But you would think they would have better, bigger plans for him outside. He just got fresh off this great feud with Kurt Angle. Where do you go with the guy from there? You put him in a feud with Luther Reigns? I guess it's more of what they thought of Luther than it was what they thought of Eddie. I mean, they had Eddie go over, thankfully. Luther Reigns was not good. He was good in a bodyguard-like role, but on his own, even with Mark Jindrak, in a tag team I can kind of see, as a singles guy, couldn't care less for him. He was not a great worker. Eddie carried him throughout the entire match. He didn't have a future in WWE. He was gone by the following year, despite the big push they tried to give this guy throughout most of 2004. He was gone by 2005 because he wasn't any good in the ring. But a decent match, what it was, a fine way of opening the show. I just wish they did more with Luther to kind of justify, not because he was good, but just kind of to justify the push they were trying to give him at that period in time. And it still boggles my mind what they were trying to do with Eddie around this late '04 era, fresh off his great feud with Kurt Angle and the feud with JBL of the WWE Championship. I digress. After that, for the Cruiserweight Championship, Spike Dudley retaining the gold against Nunzio. Fun match, a kind of typical Cruiserweight style match, but what kind of made it interesting was that you had the Dudley Boys in the corner of Spike and then Johnny Stamboli, a part of the FBI, of course, in the corner of Nunzio. So that's what kind of made it what made it noteworthy, kind of made it worthwhile. Different from your typical Crash-style Cruiserweight Championship match. So a fun, very well-wrestled match. You had your interference from the Dudley Boys who cost Nunzio the match, so Nunzio was protected in defeat. Can't really say much more about it than that. I mean, like I said in my last video, the Cruiserweight title matches were always kind of like the spot fests of the pay-per-view without much stories. But at least on this show, Nunzio had... Oh no, I think it was the following year when someone had won some Battle Royal. Maybe it was the year before. I don't know what it was. But I know for a fact that... they had Nunzio and Spike on, and they were opponents, of course. I think it was the following year when they had someone win the Battle Royal and Velocity to become the new number one contender. But in this show, they did have more of a story behind it than they just two guys facing off for the title. They had the Dudley Boys under the boss's control of Spike Dudley, and then Johnny Stamboli kind of counteracting the Dudley Boys and being in Nunzio's corner. So it was a well-wrestled match, nice story to it. Nunzio was protecting defeat, not like it mattered, but there was more of a story to it and kept the feud alive. After that, Billy Kidman and Paul London. Surprisingly, one of the biggest highlights on the show, and I thought it was great. The match itself was very well wrestled, but what I loved most about it was the story they were trying to get across with this feud. It all really started with Billy Kidman legitimately injuring Chavo Guerrero on the Shooting Star Press. He landed awkwardly, his knee landed in Chavo's eye. He was out for a while. And so that kind of triggered, they took that and they ran with it in storyline. They had Billy Kidman, act all unsure of himself. I don't want to hit the Shooting Star Press anymore, and I can't do it. He lost faith in himself. He lost confidence. And therefore, after that, we had, Billy Kidman. They lost the tag team titles. He and Paul London lost the tag team titles because he walked out on his partner, and then he just lost all confidence to do the finisher anymore. So after that, we had the feud between the two. Teddy Long arranged to put them in a match. Billy Kidman turned on Paul London on SmackDown, leading to the match on this show. So despite Billy Kidman being unsure of himself and being able to hit whether he could actually hit the Shooting Star Press without injuring Paul London, he didn't give a shit. The match was good. They told a great story. He went for the finisher anyway. And he connected, won the match, and afterwards when Paul London was coughing up blood because they thought that because he hit the Shooting Star Press perfectly, but the story they were trying to tell was that he hit it in a way that he hurt London's ribs. That's not his fault. Shit happens. You know what I mean? But whatever. He hit the Shooting Star Press afterwards anyway and attacked Paul London and even though he was being taken out in the stretcher. It was great, a great heel tactic for Billy Kidman to kind of cement the heel turn. It was awesome. It's just a shame. The only gripe that I had about it was that they didn't do anything with either of these guys from that point forward. I mean, with Paul London, he went on to tag team with Brian Kendrick years later. He was involved in the Cruiserweight division. Billy Kidman wasn't around for much longer before I think he retired from in-ring competition. So they didn't really do much with Billy Kidman. One of the best themes for one of like the most... He wasn't a bad wrestler. He was a very good wrestler. It's just that he never really went anywhere as a singles guy. But I thought it was a great feud, though, for what it was. The match was great. The angle was awesome. It was unique. And I guess kind of the best storylines in wrestling are stuff that revolve around, legitimate things that have happened in real life, So that was kind of cool. After that, for the WWE Tag Team titles, Rene Dupree and Kenzo Suzuki successfully retaining the titles against Rey Mysterio and Rob Van Dam. Good match. Dupree and Suzuki had just won the belts. It would have been weird if they dropped the championships immediately to Rey Mysterio and RVD. I'm pretty sure they did drop it to them shortly thereafterwards, however. It was a good match. Just Rene Dupree and Suzuki were a very random pairing. They cut a promo before the match. Your typical anti-USA bullshit. And Suzuki danced, which was kind of weird because he was supposed to be intimidating, but whatever. I mean, it was a fine match. Mysterio and RVD made it exciting, but I didn't really care for the duo of Dupree and Suzuki. Both were gone like by next year, so it didn't really matter anyway. Match was okay, though. Still your WWE Tag Team Champs, Dupree and Suzuki. Big Show and Kurt Angle after that. So with this angle, Big Show came back, targeted Kurt Angle and then Kurt Angle went after Big Show. He shaved his head, and this is when we officially got bald Big Show for the very first time in WWE. A good match. Again, I'm not going to shit on it because it's a Big Show match. Big Show, like I said in my 03 review, has his best matches with people that can carry him to a passable match. He's a fine worker in his own right for a guy of his size. I give him all the credit in the world. But he can't have an entertaining match unless it's the right story and the right opponent. Kurt Angle had both. They had both of those components down with the story they were trying to tell, with Big Show being out for revenge, and then Kurt Angle just being the great wrestler that he was. I wouldn't have had Kurt Angle put over Big Show. I guess they wanted to give Big Show his revenge and then give Kurt Angle his comeuppance. I get that, but I feel like there was more in Kurt Angle at this period in time than Big Show. Kurt Angle went on to feud Shawn Michaels on the road to WrestleMania, whereas Big Show feuding with Aki Bono. You know what I mean? I know he just came back. They wanted to maintain the momentum, and it took a super chokeslam from from Big Show to finish Kurt Angle off. But I still would have done it differently and had Kurt Angle go over by like a cheap win and therefore keep the feud alive and not give Kurt Angle his comeuppance so quickly. After that, the fifth match in the Best of 5 series between John Cena and Booker T for the U.S. Championship. A good match. I don't know if it was the best in their series. I enjoyed their match at SummerSlam as much as this one. I didn't see any of their other matches. Of course, not the live event one that's not broadcast anymore, but I haven't seen the SmackDown matches. But I thought it was a good match. Booker T and John Cena worked well together. I think, where would you rank Booker T and Cena's all-time greatest rivals? I mean, I made a list about that for Bleacher Report a couple months ago. In-ring rivals, not like greatest storyteller. Like I would have put Orton on that list. They never had the greatest matches, so I left them off. But I thought Booker T, again, Cena, like he was in 2003, was still very green. He was working his way up the ladder, so they built him up very nicely. But it took some quality opponents to get him over, and Booker T was that guy. Cena, after being screwed out of the United States Championship over the summer of 2003, finally winning back the belt. And I just love the idea of a best-of-5 series. It's so much better than doing a rematch and a rematch and a rematch. At least when you're doing with the best-of-5 series, people can keep track of how many wins someone has, or it's not like rematch and rematch clause. It makes sense. You can exchange wins, tell a great story, get someone over in the end. They're expecting the other match. You know what I mean? It's not like, let's do another match. Like Cena and Rollins, how many matches have they had in the last month or two? They had that match on Raw in July. SummerSlam, Night of Champions. The next night on Raw, they're having a match. They had a match at the MSG special a couple weeks ago. That's 5 matches. Why not just do a best-of-5 series? I know you can't always do that with like the mid-card titles, but the U.S. title, they did it with Benoit and Booker. They did it on this show with Cena and Booker. With Cena and Booker. So I would bring that back. We haven't seen one in almost 10 years, so I would bring it back with the U.S. Championship, with John Cena as U.S. champion, or somebody else or whoever. After that, a 6-person tag team match, Charlie Haas, Rico, and Miss Jackie taking on the Dudleys, Bubba Ray and Devon, and Dawn Marie. Fun match. Dawn Marie was never the greatest wrestler, as we saw a couple years earlier in their match with Tori Wilson. But it was fun. I mean, the Dudley boys and Charlie Haas and Rico carried most of it. They did a spot where Bubba Ray wanted a kiss from missed Jackie in the middle of the ring with his eyes closed, and it was Rico kissing him instead, and he had to go out to the outside all pissed off. That was a pretty funny spot. It wasn't supposed to be a great match. It wasn't. It was very entertaining, though. I thought Rico and Charlie Haas were a very fun duo. They were telling a great story with Dawn Marie being the slut and the bitch that she was at this period in time, having lust for Charlie Haas and trying to make Miss Jackie jealous, and she encountered her backstage and naked earlier on in the show, which was pretty great, I guess I could say. But yeah, the match itself was fun. I would take it over any Dawn Marie, Tori Wilson match any day of the week. I mean, the storyline was better. It was a little less risque, I guess. It's a very memorable storyline, the Al Wilson feud was. But was it great? I don't know. You be the judge of that. The match was fine. The Dudley Boys are kind of the end of their reign. I think this was their final pay-per-view appearance, other than One Night Stand in 2005. But I'm pretty sure this was one of their final pay-per-view appearances before taking time off and leaving the following summer, in the summer of 2005 from WWE, only to come back earlier this year, a couple months ago. So yeah, fine for what it was. Charlie Haas, Rico, and Miss Jackie are your winners. And then we get to the main event, the last ride match between JBL and The Undertaker for the WWE title. Where I said earlier, I said it in my last review with Cena and Angle. With Cena and Angle in their match. I've always enjoyed their chemistry. On the exact opposite, on the polar opposite of that spectrum, Undertaker and JBL, I've never enjoyed the chemistry these two have had. They've never had a classic feud. I mean, this was really the only true feud they had in WWE. They were trying to build up JBL as champion. He had a lot of fluke wins. I get that. That was his shtick as champion, so I can't really, you can say you got the Rollins treatment or whatever, but it works for Rollins. I don't know if it works so much for JBL. Rollins can have a great match, though. JBL didn't have many great matches as WWE champion. I mean, the matches with Eddie were good, because consider the source here, consider the opponent, Eddie Guerrero. But Undertaker, Booker T, all these other guys, The Big Show, I mean, they're not very quality opponents. They're big-time, big names, but I don't know if they could work a great match with JBL. JBL was not a great worker to begin with. He was a great character. In-ring worker, not so much. I just thought the last ride stipulation was just kind of dumb. It was a very boring match for the most part. I mean, there were some spots, it was a cool concept. I get that, but I don't know. I just thought it was kind of stupid because they didn't really pique my interest. It was more of a match and brawling and stuff like that than it was anything really, truly exciting. But the finish came when Heidenreich came out of the limo, attacked Undertaker, helped JBL win, and then after the match, they dragged the limo or the hearse, whatever, to the back of the arena, and Heidenreich drives into it with his own car, therefore killing The Undertaker and setting up an awful, awful, awful feud between Heidenreich and The Undertaker, which sucked. Worse than the matches that Undertaker and JBL had, which is saying something. So, not a good way of going off the show. The main event was really not good at all. It was a decent show overall, but to go off the show with this was a bad call. I don't really know what else they would have gone off the show with, but they did want to end with a cliffhanger. Oh, Taker is died, but they've done that storyline like a million times before this. Like for 15 years, they've done that storyline with Undertaker. Enough is enough. Not to mention, like I said, the aftermath with Heidenreich and that fucking awful storyline. But yeah, other than the main event, I thought this was a decent show. Not a great show. Would I strongly recommend you go out of your way to watch it? I wouldn't say so, but there are some matches. Like the whole undercard I thought was very fun. Eddie and Luther Reigns, fine for what it was. Eddie picks up a nice win. Cruiserweight title match, fun for what it was. Billy Kim and Paul London, one of the best matches, if not the best match in the entire show. If only for the storytelling, I thought was great. Exceptional stuff. Tag team title match was fine. Big Show and Angle was entertaining. Cena and Booker T, solid match. The six-man was good. So I can't say this was a bad show. It's just the main event left me with a sour taste in my mouth. Everything else, though, I thought was good. So check it out if you want. It's not a must-see event, but it does have enough quality matches to qualify, in my mind, as a good show. So that is No Mercy 2004. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to my review of the event. If you want to check me out on social media, you can follow me on Twitter at WrestleRant. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Be sure to check out the website nextairwrestling.net for full reviews of Raw, SmackDown, Main Event, Superstars, Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, NXT, and everything else in between. And last but not least, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All support is greatly appreciated. My next video will be covering No Mercy 2005. And until then, guys, be well, and I'll catch you down the road.